V- all right. Everyone hear me? Perfect. Welcome to United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey. Once again, we're back here in Jenny Jump State Forest, uh, up here at the observatory. So, because I believe there's a couple people still wandering down, ready to find their seats, I'm going to go over the stuff for our online audience. Because that is right, we do live stream this both on YouTube and Twitch. So if you ever can't make it out, or you're just looking for something to do on a Saturday night, do feel free to check us out there and hit those like and subscribe buttons. That being said, do check us out on our website, uacnj.org. That's where you're going to find a list of all our upcoming talks and our previous talks, as well as our upcoming events. Like we are opening early on October 14th for the what we can see of the annular solar eclipse coming up. So that should be fun. We are in about the 25% visibility band, so not the best view, but we do like to get that message out there that we try and do all the safety precautions for the eclipse and whatnot. But that is neither here nor there. You can also check us out on our social media. Facebook, Instagram. We have a Discord channel. Do check us out there. Ask any questions. We love hearing about questions and seeing those astrophotography images. So now, since it looks like most of you have found your seats, we have to do this starting safety briefing. First things first, if you need to use the bathroom, that is the porta potty in the back to my left, so that would make it your right. It is lit up by a red light. We also have a little museum and gift shop area, which will be open after the presentation, because still, despite me begging and asking, they will not give me the technology to be in two places at once. As we're wandering around, because it is dark, do keep any flashlights we may have pointed towards the ground, just because we don't want to accidentally blind people. That being said, we are using our headlights when we leave because we do not like getting run over, and I am certain you feel the same way. No one needs to be playing Frogger tonight. And so, I believe that's it for our safety preview. Our presentation tonight is the Saros and the solar eclipse with Tom, and can you pronounce your last name correctly?
Haeberle.
Haeberle. I am glad I asked that, because I would have probably gotten it wrong.
Everybody does. So don't worry.
And I try not to. Tom is the former director of the Amateur Astronomers Association and has been chasing eclipses as far as he can remember. Normally, he does these talks with his son, who is also named Tom, which is very fitting. They are both planning on actually traveling out west to see the annular eclipse in totality this coming month on the 14th, and have both seen several solar eclipses on both American continents. So, with that, here's Tom.
Hey, folks. Thank you. Good to see you all. Thanks for coming out tonight. I can hardly see you. I'm not sure if you can see me, but that might be a good thing, so don't worry about that. Tonight's presentation, like Kim said, is the Saros and the solar eclipse. Or in other words, we're going to talk about solar eclipses to come and what you can expect to see. And in regards to the Saros, it's predicting long-term solar eclipse and looking for their patterns, especially by the ancients, how they first got to realize certain patterns the sun and the moon do as they do their dance across the sky. Now, that is not a solar eclipse. That's a lunar eclipse. I picked it because it looked pretty. But this here, this is a total solar eclipse of the sun that we saw, my family and I, my wife Mary and my son Tommy in Chile. This is what you want to see. This is why it's important to be in the path of the shadow of the moon. So it's kind of like going to a ball game, right? You drive into the parking lot, you hear the crowd roar, but you're not sure what's going on unless you're inside the stadium. It's two different worlds, right? The real show is right here in the path. Okay. Now my son couldn't make it here. He's not feeling well. But we're both partners with NASA and the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, ASP. We're part of the Eclipse Ambassador Program, and you can feel free to check it out yourself. They're looking for volunteers. It involves a partner of undergraduates and astronomy enthusiasts or umbrophiles like myself, and to get the public engaged and to work together and to get to go out to underserved communities mainly to get them interested in eclipses, the ones that are off the path. It's a very good program, and we just got that going, me and my son. So I mentioned that I'm an umbrophile. What's an umbrophile? He's an eclipse chaser, eclipse enthusiast, astronomy enthusiast. So a good friend of mine, Tony Hoffman, came up with this great scale for different levels of umbrophile and see which one you are. So to start with, number one, an umbrophobe may travel long distances to avoid being in the path of a solar eclipse, even a partial one. If this is not possible, will hide indoors during the eclipse in fear of eclipse rays, vampires, the apocalypse, and dragons devouring the sun. That's an umbrophobe. A penumberhead pays no heed to the news and reports of an impending eclipse, walks or drives past anybody that's gathering to view an eclipse, turns on his headlights at the onset of darkness, but doesn't bother to look at the sky. Number three, the average citizen is aware when an eclipse is visible locally, but may not give it much thought, would stop to look through a telescope or at a projected image or pull off the road and at the onset of darkness to admire the view. Number four, the umbra-curious makes a good point going outside during an eclipse, may have a pair of eclipse glasses, a pinhole projection device, or similar eclipse viewing aid. Might even try to photograph the event. Pre-umbrophile would take the day off to see a total solar eclipse, drive a few hours to see one, even schedule a vacation to be in the shadow as long as it's not too inconvenient. 6. The umbrophile second class would go or has gone to the ends of the earth in attempts to see totality, but has yet to earn his or her eclipse wings. The umbrophile, number 7, can enjoy the occasional total solar eclipse without feeling the need to chase every single one of them, probably because it costs money and it costs time. Number 8, the dyed-in-the-wool umbrophile can't go anywhere near an eclipse without running into a dozen familiar faces. The umbromaniac does not let a little thing like life stand in the way of getting to the next eclipse. And the umbraholic, or aka burnt umbra, has lost job, house, and or family due to obsessive pursuit of solar eclipses. So these are some of the people out there that either they're really into it or not so much. Which number are you? I think I'm number 7. So we live in a good time right now, a good point in time where we're going to be experiencing the next couple eclipses, which is the annual next month. You got the total in April, and you've got a lot more. The last time we had an eclipse was in 2017, but before then, there was a 38-year drought. And the last one was, should I use my little pointer here? Was in February of 1979. So for 38 years, not one solar eclipse, the shadow of the moon, did not cross the United States at all. So there's a really big gap. Now some of you, especially older folks, might remember some of these eclipses. Maybe the May 10th, 1994 one. It was an annual eclipse, and you could drive upstate to up New York or parts of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and see a nice, good annual eclipse, a nice deep shadow at that time. And there was a few back in 1970 and so on. So that was the last one until 2017. Oh, I did it again here. So I have my vacation list. Unbeknownst to my wife, these are the places I plan to go after April of 2024. Maybe, not really, but we'll see. But here's some really nice events that are coming up following the April 8th eclipse. You've got one, I'm using abbreviations here. ASE is annual eclipse. There's one in Patagonia. Patagonia is the tip of South America, Chile and Argentina. That's October 2nd. And then in 2025, you got a couple of partial eclipses, PSEs, and total lunar eclipses in 2025. The March 29th one in 2025 is again going to be from New York City. It's going to be like similar to what's happening in New Jersey next month. You'll see a 25% partial solar eclipse. If you drive further, the further north you go, you'll get a deeper partial. If you go to Upper Quebec, you'll see 85%. These are two good places to go, Spain or Iceland in 2026. And again, there's another annular eclipse in Patagonia on February 6, 2027. Now these two here, the TSC, total solar eclipse, and the ASC in South America, these are very long duration eclipses. Very rare. It's for this one here in Egypt or Spain, it's almost 6.5 minutes, and that's very rare for a total solar eclipse. Usually they're about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes long. They go very quick. Before you know it, it's done. And then we have, again, Australia. Back in New York in 2029, we got some more partials. There's one at 41%. So these are ones that you could either stay local and see a partial, or go to these places and see them in their full glory. And here we have a map of 2001 to 2050. Of course, we're familiar with this one here, August 17, 2021. How many went to see that eclipse, the total eclipse here? Nobody? Well, you're in for a treat next year. I hope you do go out and go into the path of the eclipse to see the full totality of a solar eclipse. So there's a lot of opportunity to see total solar eclipses, including the next year, of course, 2024. There's one up here in Montana in 2044, and in the south in 2045. I saw this guy back in 2012. It was an annular eclipse. That was my first one. And of course, this one is almost right in the same path. Okay. So what can you expect to see during a solar eclipse, whether it be total or annular? As the event happens, the sky will look dark, will look kind of grayish in the sky. Even though there's not a cloud in the sky, it looks odd. It's like at this point, the moon is covering the sun by 70 or 80%. And what else can you see? As it gets even deeper, if you're standing by a tree, you might want to look on the ground and look at the leaves' shadows. You might see these little crescents on the ground. The leaves act like a pinhole that creates this effect. It's really cool. That I've seen. The next thing, which I've heard about but I've not seen myself, is what they call shadow bands. If you're near like a house with a white painting or on a sandy beach or even the snow during a deep eclipse, you might notice these ripples going by, these shadow bands. And that's some kind of atmospheric disturbance that's happening in the air. But it can only be seen just right before the totality, or 90% plus of a partial eclipse. Okay. So, the geometry of an annual eclipse. So what exactly makes this different from a total solar eclipse? Well, first of all, the moon casts a shadow like any other object in space, and because it's spherical, it's a conal shape. So the further it gets away from the moon, the narrower the cone gets, the umber cone. In the case of an annular eclipse, it does not quite reach the surface. So you have this ring of fire around the moon trying to cover the sun. And so some light is getting into that cone. And you'll see it, it's called a central eclipse because it's exactly blocking the sun. But it's not quite reaching the earth. Why is that? The moon's shadow is generally its distance from the earth, but the moon is elliptical. It could be very close or very far. Like, for example, right, everyone's big on the supermoon, right? We had about 4 supermoons this year. Usually when it's less than 360,000 kilometers or less, it's considered a supermoon, which means that the moon is much brighter than usual, and you might notice it being bigger. Probably not. You would really need really good eyes to determine that, but usually the moon is brighter. So in that case, the moon is very close. But there are points in this orbit where it's much further away, like 247,000 miles away. And it may not, its shadow may not reach the Earth when it's blocking the sun. So you get the ring of fire and the annular eclipse effect. Now here we have next month, October 14, 2023. This is around mid-eclipse from around here, Hope, New Jersey. I use the land of make-believe as a marker. This is pretty much what you're going to be seeing through a telescope. And of course, you can't look at the sun, right? It's too bright. You'll hurt your eyes. There are things that you can use to view it safely. And the folks here, I'm sure, that provide the telescopes to view the event, their telescopes will be properly filtered. This is something that is very common. They sell them here in the gift shop. Solar viewers. If I put this on, I can't see nothing. Right? But if the sun's out, I would look at it and it would appear the same size as that moon. And you can watch the event happen just with these. Or go to a place that has a telescope. If you have your own telescope, make sure you have the proper protection. The best to use, I like binoculars. You can even get solar filters for the binoculars. What you don't want to do with these things, and I always try to explain that to people, especially parents with young ones, is that when you wear these, you don't want to do this. You don't want to wear these and put this up to the sun. Why? Because this will magnify the sun's rays, and it could burn a hole through this. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to look through a telescope with these. These are only for viewing without equipment. Okay? So here we are. Here's my family back in 2017. We're in Wyoming. We got our eclipse glasses on. Actually, the event's over, and we're celebrating. It's a really great thing to see. I definitely highly recommend you getting in the path of a total solar eclipse. So this is the diagram that I used when I went out in 2012 to see the annual eclipse in Arizona. You might notice that the sun is a bit larger than the moon. And then when the moon moves in front of the sun, you still got that photosphere sticking out there. And even though it's maybe only 4 or 5% sticking out, that 4 or 5% is still a million times brighter than that full moon. So again, eye protection, very important. Okay. So again, an annual eclipse is really basically a transit across the sun, across the photosphere. Back in 2012, my good friend Tony Hoffman took these two photographs. On May 21st, 2012 was the annual eclipse. And you can see, right, it's a big black sphere, but really no different than this one over here, taken about 3 weeks later on June 8th, of Venus transiting the sun. So they're basically the same thing. Two space objects going past the sun from our point of view. And this is another photo taken back in 1882 by David P. Todd, who was a very prolific eclipse chaser himself. This was considered one of the best photographs taken back in the 19th century. He took this from the Lick Observatory out in California. And David P. Todd was a peculiar fellow. Sorry for the P's. He was into Percival Lowell's Mars theories, and he also believed in the canals of Mars. In fact, in the 1920s, he went as so far as to silence radios across the nation so that they can listen for signals from Mars during its close approach in 1924. Okay. So what are the different phases, the different stages of an eclipse? So a total solar eclipse and an annual eclipse, it's pretty much the same stage. You have first contact, which is the beginning of the partial phase. Then totality, or annularity, begins at second contact, when the moon moves within the disk of the sun. That's called the central eclipse. That's when the totality begins and the annual eclipse begins. And then there's mid-eclipse where they're both centered over the sun or on the sun. And then third contact would be the end of the event for the totality and annual eclipse. The moon starts egressing, leaving the disk of the sun. And it goes all the way to the end. Fourth contact, it's off the sun's disk. It's no longer blocking the sun. The whole event probably lasts about 2 hours and 40 minutes, 3 hours. Most people start packing up after totality ends. I like to stick around and watch the whole thing. I mean, it's a rare event. You know, why not? Take a few more pictures if you can with your iPhone through a telescope or something. The partial phase, which is what we'll see here next month, is similar, except there's only a first contact and a last contact. There's no second and third contact, because that's because the moon, of course, is not completely covering the sun. So those are the 3 types of solar eclipses that you can see. Okay. Here we are again, October 14th, next month. The little red dot is where the umbral or antumbral cone is touching the Earth, and that's where you want to be to see the sun, the moon in front of the sun. I like this now. So it goes from North America down through Central America, through South America, and out to sea. These are pretty cool if you want to look them up on the NASA website. And I think if you look up solar eclipse on Wikipedia, they have these, what do you call them, GIFs, GIFs. So, again, the difference between a total solar eclipse and an annual eclipse. Again, the umbral cone is not quite reaching the Earth. It falls short, and the cone kind of inverts with ambient light coming in from the sun, and you get this ring of fire, as they call it. If you're in the yellow path, you're going to see this. If you're anywhere within that lighter gray area, that big circumference, you're going to see a partial eclipse. The closer you are to the yellow path, the deeper the partial. Same thing with a total solar eclipse. Now this here, the moon's much closer to the Earth. The umbral cone is actually touching the Earth. The width of the path could be anywhere from a couple of miles to about 170 miles, depending on the distance of the moon to the Earth. And once again, if you're not in the path, if you're in that lighter gray area, that big circumference of penumbra shadow, you're going to see a partial eclipse. Again, the closer you get to the path, the deeper the partial. But once again, for this guy, you want to be in the path. Trust me. And here it is again, how a total solar eclipse works. Here's the partial phase. Definitely not drawn to scale, but it explains exactly how it works. Okay. So, ancient eclipse predictions. How did they know? The Egyptians, the Greeks, the Babylonians, the Chinese, they all just watched. They watched the sky. They were good sky watchers. They watch the sky because they want to know when the seasons change, when a certain constellation rises. Is it going to be summer? Is it going to be winter? And they watch the sun. Why is the sun so low around this time of year? Why is it so high? And then they see the sun and the moon get together as a solar eclipse or lunar eclipse. Why? So they started keeping records, keeping track, and in the hopes that they're going to get it right, because they would report their findings to their emperor or king. And it was very important for them to get that information right, because knowledge is power. The emperor or king wants to know ahead of time what's going to happen so he can inform the masses. But in the case of these two Chinese astronomers, Hai and Ho, they failed to predict the solar eclipse 4,000 years ago. Hai and Ho, they were I heard they were a fun bunch. They liked to have a good time from time to time, but they neglected their duties and they failed to report a solar eclipse that happened in China. And the emperor got so mad, not only were they fired, they lost their heads. So they were out of a job. In Mesopotamia, we had the Babylonians, very good astronomers, very good record keepers. And they're the ones that really got the pattern down. They figured out that every 18 years there was a possibility of there being a solar or lunar eclipse. It was like every 18 years, 10 or 11 days, depending on how many leap years were in between those two events. That pattern of 18 years was called the Saros. The Babylonians didn't use that term. It was only until 1686 when the great Edmund Halley, the predictor of repeating events like comets, also applied the Saros to that solar eclipse cycle and lunar eclipse cycle of 18 years with the name Saros, which in Greek means repeat. So now the astronomers of the 17th, 18th, 19th century, they had a name, Saros, so they knew what to call it. They can pretty much do their own calculations. You can imagine how the calculations must have been trying to do it by pencil and paper. It took them a long time. But at least the Saros gave you a quick idea that an eclipse can happen at this time, and then they can go and do the work if they think it's going to be happening in their area. This gentleman here, George Vandenberg, he was a Dutch professor, an amateur astronomer in the 1950s. He devised a great scheme of numbering these Saros cycles. And in 1955, he wrote this book, Periodicity and Variation of Solar and Lunar Eclipses. He came up with this large array called the Saros Enix Panorama. He took all these eclipses dating back to 1207 BC through 2161 out of a canon from a book in the 19th century written by Theodor von Oppolzer called the Canon der Versternung, which is canon of eclipses. And it's here where he took the 8,000 solar eclipses listed in that book and created this large array. And he's got all these different icons for partial, total, annular. I don't know if you can read that, but it's really an amazing piece of work that he did. And this is the bedrock for what scientists use today when they talk about a solar eclipse, total or annular, what Saros it is, Saros 145, 136, and so on. And a Saros has its own life. A Saros starts out as a partial eclipse all the way at the top of the world or bottom of the world, depending if it's a descending eclipse or an ascending eclipse. So for this one here, Saros 145, we recognize this date, right? August 21st. Oh, I ran out of gas. 2017. It started out a partial back in 1639, and eventually it became a central eclipse. First as an annular back in 1891. A little part of the Antumbra cone was touching Siberia. And then look at the pattern. 18 years later, plus 10 or 11 days, you have 1909, June 17th. And again, it was an annular. Add another 18 years, 1927. Now it's the darker lines are a total eclipse. Now it's become total. Again, crossing Siberia and Scandinavia. And if you notice, the dates are advancing also 10 days in each of the months. So it migrates from one to another by 18 years plus 10 or 11 days. Also, it's 18 years, 10 or 11 days, and a third day. That third day makes the pattern shift over 120 degrees. So every event gets moved over westward. 1963, right? Again, so it's over Canada. And then 18 years later, in 1981, now it's over here. So it's going westward. 18 years later, We have August 11th, 1999, the Great European Eclipse. I'm not sure if anyone remembers that. It was a really big deal, like we had here in 2017. It was a big deal in Europe, where it came across. I ran out of gas. Came across England or France, Germany, the Yugoslavia area, and so on through Turkey. That was a really big event. But you can see the progression, how it moves westward as the Saros ages. What do I mean by Saros aging? So it has a life. A Saros will last anywhere from 1,200 to 1,300 years. Again, it starts out as partial, at one of the poles. It migrates down towards the equator, and then continues on to the bottom, or vice versa. So here we have Saros 145, spanning from the year 1639 to 3009. Isn't this cool? I like it. No? Okay. So you might recognize some of the years. Notice how it starts from the top, becomes a total, goes back to being a partial, and ends at the bottom of the world. Odd number Saroses are descending. They go from the North Pole to the South Pole. Even number Saroses are the reverse. They go from south to north. Here's another one, Saros 136. This is the one that's going to appear in Egypt in the year 2027. Okay. So again, it starts at the bottom. I think in the 14th century, becomes an annular, becomes a hybrid. I'll explain that. A total, migrates to the equator, goes up, up, up north, becomes a partial, and goodbye. So a hybrid is a combination of annular and total. I wasn't going to really talk about that, but I can. It's again the Earth's the moon's cone, shadow cone, is trying to reach the Earth, trying to reach the surface. Now, when it first comes to think of the Earth as an 8,000-mile ball, right? So when the moon's cone, the tip of it, when it first starts out, it may not reach the side of the Earth that's much further away. It has to wait till it gets near mid-eclipse, and the cone finally touches the Earth's surface. So from over here, it's an annular, but up here, it's total. And then as it goes around the ball, the shadow may slip again and not reach the Earth and become an annual eclipse again. That's called a hybrid or an annular total eclipse. They're rare. They may happen every 13 or 20 years. In fact, there was one this past year, in April. There was one in Australia where thousands of people went to Australia, and it was only on this one tip of land, a peninsula, and there was a big gathering there. And luckily, it started out as an annual, but when it got to that point, it was total. So they got to see like a 17 or a 30-second eclipse, which is like that. I wouldn't be futzing around with a camera or anything. I would just watch the damn thing before it goes away. And here we go, April 8th, 2024, here from New Jersey, again, from this spot. This is what you would see. You got a lot of sun sticking out there. It's not going to cover it. You got to go up north. You got to go up to New York, or maybe out to Ohio, but it's not going to cover it. So again, what do you need? You need one of these or equipment that has the proper filtering to look at it. So this is a total solar eclipse from my friend Michael Guerra, who was in Aruba. That was also my first total solar eclipse that I saw in Aruba. It was a good experience. So you can see the difference. You got the moon completely covering the sun, the moon not completely covering the sun. So just be careful. But it's, again, worth to see it as a total solar eclipse. And here's a partial phase that we took in Chile back in 2019. We actually used a welder's glass to cover the camera to take the picture. Nothing fancy. Okay. And here's another one of my pictures back in Chile in the Atacama. My first time using the camera, DSLR. So, but I think it came out pretty good. I don't know. I like it. But this is my favorite picture right here. The midnight sun in Chile in 2019. Nice panoramic view. I mean, it looks like nighttime, right? It's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun isn't obviously down yet. It's being eclipsed. In fact, I think that's the sun there being eclipsed. These are street lights. And we had found this place. Chile was going crazy about the eclipse. Everywhere people were going nuts. They were like parking on the side of the road. We couldn't find a spot, so we just kept on driving. And I decided to check out this one small town, and it was dead. Nothing was going on. And we saw this nice restaurant, so we decided to pull over. We hung out. We had a nice dinner. It was a really good nice mom and pop restaurant, a really good cooked meal. And we just hung out there. Me and my son set up the scopes, and we waited for the eclipse to happen, and we were looking at it, taking pictures. Then all of a sudden, a truck pulls off the road at a good clip, and luckily he stopped and didn't kill us. And the guy gets out, and he's looking around like he has no idea what the hell's going on. He had no idea that there was an eclipse going on. I guess he's number 3 or 4 on Tony's scale. But that was pretty funny. But he was a nice guy, but he scared the crap out of us. But again, you can see how dark it gets. And another thing, if you're near like a farm or something like that, check out the animals, how they react. When we were out in Wyoming in 2017, we were by this ranch off the side of the road, and there were a bunch of cows there, and they were just hanging out. And as the eclipse progressed, as it got deeper and deeper to becoming total, the cows started walking away. It was like time to go home, time to say goodnight. That's always fun. And here's some of my friends that I met, these young kids. They actually came out afterwards, and they were talking. We were trying to communicate. Now, unfortunately, I don't speak the language, and since I've been trying to learn, but it's not really working out for me. But like they would hear me talk, and they would start calling me English, English. Cute kids. And of course, when you're done with an eclipse, you want to relax. So when I'm not chasing solar eclipses, I do what I do best. I drink Corona beer. I thought that was a good end to the day, drinking a Corona. Now, back in 2017, this eclipse coming up in 2024 and 2017 took place during the summertime, during baseball season. So Nashville, for instance, they have a minor league professional team there, and I guess they were playing this big party in Nashville. And I like the icon that they did, the ball eclipsing the sun. And I'm wondering for 2024, now it's the start of the baseball season. Will the Yankees make these pinstripe solar viewers? The Mets too? I don't know. Something to look out for. Now, in 1973, there was this advertisement by Abraham and Strauss. And the advertisement reads, "The next eclipse is on April 8th, 2024. This is back in 1973. By then, we will be on our way to our 51st pennant." I don't think so. That hasn't happened. It's not going to happen. It's impossible. But wishful thinking, I guess, right? I thought that was cute. So, about to conclude this presentation. So again, this is an eclipse taken from space, from the Soho spacecraft, and they superimposed an actual eclipse picture onto their LASCO pictures. They have 2 types of cameras, C2 and C3. I believe this is a C2 camera. That's probably one of the planets going by, that big bright one there. I thought that was pretty cool the way they did it. They matched up the coronal streamers, so you can see how far they really extend in space when there's no atmosphere to mute things and that. And this is a picture, I think, from my friend again, Michael Gara, taking a total, and that was our attempt back in 1998 with a regular chemical film camera to take a picture. We only got a good partial out of it. So, an eclipse from space in 2021 and from Aruba in 1998. So the question is, where will you be in 2024? And that's my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you, Tom. And my answer is I'm going to be right here because, like I said, we are going
Sure.
to be open for that. So, how this works is we are going to be having a question and answer session. For that, for the people here, you're going to kind of raise your hands and wave them around when you have a question. Because I'm kind of like a T-Rex in the dark. I've been staring at a screen, monitoring our online chat. So I'm a bit night blind, despite the fact that the moon is very bright tonight. For everyone online, you can just type your questions because you guys have it easy. But first, because I noticed a couple of you snuck in during our presentation and therefore did not get the safety brief. And everyone must get the safety brief, whether you want to or not. So, first off, if you need to use the restroom, that is the porta potty to the back, to my left, and your right. It is illuminated by a red light. We also have a little gift shop and museum area that you can check out. I'll be manning that after we get through our question and answer session. I think we might have a telescope open. Like I said, I'm night blind, so unfortunately I can't see whether the roofs are open on the telescope observatories because each of those little sheds you see has a roll-off roof and houses its own telescope. So if it's open, there will be a volunteer manning it, and you can ask any questions. There are several open.
Thanks,
Exciting.
Chris.
Which is actually nice for a change. Last week it was quite rainy. So, to start us off, also, headlights. We do use headlights when we leave because we do not want to get run over and we don't want anyone else getting run over either. There is not a me first line to do that. Let's not. And flashlights, although it's quite bright because of the moon, if you are using them, keep them pointing towards the ground because we don't want to accidentally blind people that we don't need to. So I'll start this off with our first online question. How would you seek recovery for an umbraholic?
There is no recovery. They're hopeless. Believe me, they're hopeless. I've met a few, and
Yeah,
nothing's stopping them.
someone in online chat said no recovery is possible. Becomes more like tying Odysseus to the mast of the ship as they go by the signs. No stopping them. Right, so question out here.
Anybody?
I hear crickets. Which is good because we are in a state park. I'd be a little alarmed if there weren't crickets. Oh, hold on, let me just walk out because chances are they want to hear the question too.
How far north into New York should you go to see the one in April?
Sure. For the one April 8th,
Yep.
You can go straight up the thruway onto the Adirondack Parkway into the Adirondacks for starters, or you can make a left turn at Albany and go to Niagara Falls, which is a nice place to see a total solar eclipse. That's about how far you can go. Okay.
Also, you can go on to the NASA website they have a whole eclipse section, and you can kind of see the totality path and go, hey, look, this is right near us. So
Exactly.
that's what a lot of people tend to do.
Mhm.
All right. So our next online question is actually pertinent to that. Why open the observatory if you guys are not in the totality path?
Is that a question for you?
Well, it's well, we welcome all questions.
Yeah.
So
Well, I guess the short answer is that, like I said, some people they'll want to travel to see these things. Some just want to stay home, and that's perfectly fine too. So whatever works to your schedule. A lot of these eclipse chasing adventures cost money and time. A lot of us work 9-to-5 jobs. We just can't take off and go gallivanting around the globe to chase these things. So when they come to your back door, it's worth it. In fact, the April 8th one, I'm going to be upstate New York. Someone say, "Why are you going to New York? Why don't you go to Texas where the skies are clearer?" It's my home state. I always wanted to see what it would look like from my home state. Just the way it is, and you never know. If you go to Texas, you might be chasing tornadoes instead of chasing the shadow of the moon. So, I think I'm better off in New York.
Like Tom said, we are open. Even though for the October one, we're in about, like I said, that 25% range where the moon's gonna kind of clip the sun. Just for the fact that we do like bring as much love of science and astronomy as we can to everyone. And like Tom said, not everyone can afford to travel to things like Texas and whatnot. The even driving, that's quite an expensive feat.
Yep.
I don't want to think about air travel because that's a hassle all in and of itself.
And that's gotten expensive too.
So, like I said, we are going to be open, even if it's kind of drizzly. What we'll do is we'll try and get a stream from one of the places that are in the totality path up here on this screen that we're currently looking at. And we'll probably even have that even if it's nice, just so that you can kind of go like, yes, I see what's going on.
It'll be a fun event to check out, no matter where you go.
So our next question out here, like I said, I'm kind of a T-Rex, so.
I was curious, can you get total solar eclipses on any other planets or only on Earth?
Oh, definitely. There are lots of eclipses that happen, like, say, Jupiter. You look at Io. In fact, Jupiter's rising. I'm not sure if there's an event, but every night there's almost an eclipse taking place on Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's big, right? Their moons are big too. Some of them are the size of our moon or even the size of the planet Mercury. But there's no comparison to Jupiter. So the Earth and the moon have a unique situation where the sun is 400 times further away than the moon, but the moon is 400 times larger than the sun, right? So you have this.
I think you got that
I
backwards.
got it backwards. So
the sun is 400
100 times further
larger than,
and larger.
yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
And the moon's.
Yes. Okay. All right. So you have this perfect cosmic coincidence where you have a perfect match. Both the sun and the moon are half a degree of apparent size in our sky. That's why when you wear one of these things, when you look at the sun, it looks like you're looking at the moon, except there's no features that you can see like you can see with the man in the moon. Okay.
Right. And because that question did get answered about why are.
But just one last thing about Jupiter and its moons. I would definitely check it out with these telescopes out here. If there's an event happening with the shadow going across Jupiter, that is an eclipse. You also see the moons going behind Jupiter and winking out. That's a lunar eclipse. So Jupiter's great. It's a great place. You'll see a lot of eclipses right at your disposal, right at your telescope. So it's a really cool thing to check out. Okay.
All right. So this one's a fun one. Ring of Fire. Isn't there a cream for that?
A cream?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that. I'm not,
It was more of a snarky remark than
okay.
like hey, Ring of Fire sounds like a medical condition you would be suffering after Taco Bell.
Is there a cream for that? Okay. Sorry.
I heard chuckles out there, so someone got it. All right. In reality, the next question online is, are there any safety checks you should use if you have solar glasses from the 2017 eclipse?
Well, I mean, just examine them carefully. You can actually go find a really bright light, like maybe your car lights, and I think you should be able to see any defects within your solar glasses. That's one way. But definitely, carefully examine them. Oh, but you know what? These things are pretty cheap. I would get a new pair to be on the safe side.
Yep. So, like you said, just make sure you can't see any bright light coming through it. Although, if you are concerned, and you should have reason to do, like I said, if you happen to come here, we have them for sale. They are on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I know that for a fact. They're on most websites now that sell astronomy things.
So if there was a rip in this one, if I was to put it on, I would be able to see the moon. I should not be able to see the moon with these things. And they are. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And one of our observers, Paul, has mentioned, do check that when you are buying them, you are buying ISO certified glasses.
Read the back.
Read the back, read the details, because that is going to get you the protection. If they do not say that, it's a hazard, a potential hazard. There's a chance. It's a gamble, is what I'm trying to say. All right, another question from out here.
Anybody?
Perfect.
Oh, I was at the Wyoming Eclipse too, and I just remember when it got dark. I just thought it was cool as the cricket started.
I think I know you.
Yeah,
You're my wife. Oh, okay.
yeah. I just thought it was because as soon as it got dark, it's like the crickets all of a sudden just.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always remember that. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing to check out the environment when this is happening. You know, check out your surroundings.
All right, so our next online questions. Can you photograph the eclipse with just your phone or camera?
Yeah, you can photograph a total solar eclipse with no problem. I've seen that done. I've seen a few good iPhone cameras take some really great pictures. But again, when it's not being covered completely by the sun, you got to be careful, and you would definitely want to use some kind of covering to cover your phone. I think there's apps out there now that you can use to adjust the focus and brightness, and they actually provide a covering for your phone to look at the partial phases of the eclipse or the annular phase of the eclipse. So again, an annular eclipse is a glorified partial eclipse. You always want to use protection, right, when you look at it. With a total solar eclipse, as soon as the moon is completely covered, you take off the glasses and you look at the thing, and when it ends at third contact, you put the glasses back on.
And usually, if I were out there on a totality path, I'd wait until some of the people around me, I don't see them going, my eyes, before I look. But that's just me. But he is right. You do need the filter protection for your cameras, because they do kind of focus late. And oddly enough, eclipse time is a wonderful time when many camera manufacturers like Canon and Nikon start getting people saying, the sensor on my camera melted. So don't do that to your camera or phone. There's whole websites telling you all about how to do that safely without destroying your however many dollar phone. They're expensive. All right, another question out here.
Anybody?
If not, if you have a question, raise your hand, wave it about, so you get my attention, and we'll get through some of these online questions. So, our next online question is, are welding helmets good enough for solar viewing not only during eclipses, but normally?
A welding glass, right? I'm not sure what they mean by welding helmet, but I guess the helmet with the visor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could look at the sun with that. You know, it's got to be a certain grade though. I think it's level 14 is the welding grade that you want to use. But again, I would recommend that you get a solar viewer.
Yeah, I think that was
Yeah,
more of
I
a
think
comment because you had made a passing comment that you took a picture through welding glass. So,
Yeah,
and chances are,
they
people
can be
have
used.
welding helmets
They
at
can
home.
be used, but I think these are more recommended than a welder's glass.
All right. So I'm going to put a last call out for our online chat. If you have any last minute questions, do get those in. I also want to do a shout out to another channel that actually brought their viewers into us, Nerduino. Thank you for rating in and saying hi and bringing us your viewers.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I hope you enjoyed the talk. I'll be up here if you want to ask me any more questions. Thanks again for coming out.
All right. So any last minute questions out here? Oh, perfect.
So my question is, why does the Saros end? Like they said, it was a time limit.
Yeah.
So why does it end?
So again, like I said, the way it works, for whatever reason, a star starts out as a partial at the poles, all right, and then there's an evolution. It becomes a central eclipse, either annular or total, and then reverts back to a partial as it exits the south pole area. It's got a life of 1,200 to 1,300 years. At any given time, there are only 40 Saros cycles generally that are active. I think right now it's Saros 117 to Saros 156 that are active Saruses. Eventually, they leave the Earth, and that's it. Then the next one is born and is given a new number. The next one is born at the poles and given a new Saros number. So you can go to the NASA website. They've got them all listed from into the negatives, going back in time all the way up to Saros like 200, and you can see like where they're going to be at that point in time. The Saros 145 that I was showing before ends in 3009, and just think of that. What's the world going to be like then in 3009 when that Saros comes to an end? You're welcome.
All right. So I did give a bit of time for our online chat because delay happens. So,
Okay.
Tony Hoffman does want to say hi, Tom.
Hi, Tony.
So, we often get volunteers or people from our clubs that we know very well dropping in saying hi. Any more questions out here? All right. So since it looks like we're done with questions, Paul has a quick announcement.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight.
Paul.
I'm sorry.
He's got a loud voice.
I'm sorry. I forgot about our live audience. Live audience, unfortunately, this does not pertain to you, but for everyone who is here, people in internet world, it does not pertain to you. But our telescopes on the left-hand side in the observatories are open. Please stop in there. We also have 2 telescopes in the field, one to the left of the building here, one past the observatories on the right towards the cliff area. When you approach any scope that is set up on the lawn, those are people's personal scopes, and it's just polite to, it's considered star party etiquette just to ask before you look through their telescope. So, but any of the observatories open on the left-hand side over there, they are definitely club scopes, and go ahead and line up and take a look at the cool stuff in the sky. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for another great presentation. Thank you for everyone who's come here and joined us, not only in person, but online. Do check us out on our website, uacnj.org, and everyone have a good night.